Nobody cared.
Right.
For those joining us via Zoom, we'll start in a minute or two. Thank you.
Go ahead and start right now. Good morning, everybody. It's the regular meeting of LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission of Santa Cruz County, 9 o'clock, March 5th. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Jim Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Roger Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Joe Clark, Commissioner Justin Cummings,
Here.
Chair Manu Koenig,
Here.
Vice Chair Rochelle Lather,
Here.
Commissioner Eduardo Montesino,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Ed Banks,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Kimberly DeSerpa, Alternate Commissioner John Hunt, Alternate Commissioner Fred Keeley. We have quorum, Chair. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I'll move to item 2, the executive officer's message. Director Serrano.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, and as a reminder to members of the audience attending today, this will be a hybrid meeting. Commissioners will be here in person, but our legal counsel and members of the public have the option to join us virtually or in person. For anyone that wants to speak on an agenda item today, they'll have up to 3 minutes. Staff will inform them when they have 1 minute left and when their time is up. For those that are joining us via conference call or Zoom, if you can just raise your hand by clicking on the reactions tab, or if you're joining us via call, you can press *9 and that will raise your hand. Again, Chair, this is just a quick summary of the process, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll proceed to item 3, adoption of minutes. Does any commissioner have comments or questions on the minute?
I'll second that.
All right, just if there's any member of the public wishes to comment on the minutes. All right, seeing none, we have motion by, was it Commissioner Anderson and second by Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. I will proceed to oral communications. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on items not on the agenda, provided that the subject matter is within the jurisdiction of LAFCO and that no action may be taken on an off agenda item unless authorized by law. Please, any member of the public may approach the podium.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mike Weatherford. I'm the foreperson for this year's civil grand jury. And I have 2 things I wanted to communicate within my allotted time. One is there is an item on the agenda today related to CSA. I just wanted to thank the LAFCO staff for the hard work that they did on this project and just to express our appreciation for that work. It's a lot of effort and it's very much appreciated. The second is more of a sales pitch. Many of you and your constituents, we are beginning our recruitment process for next year's civil grand jury. And there's going to be a number of outreach events at libraries and other things. And so to the extent you become aware of someone who might be interested, we'd encourage them to apply. We're beginning our application process now, and we'll take those through May 1st. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else here in chambers wish to address the commission? Seeing none, is there anyone online?
No, sir.
All right, then we'll proceed with item 5, public hearings, and 5A is the fiscal year end audit report. Director Serrano, do you have a report for us on this?
Thank you, Chair. As this commission may recall, last year, Santa Cruz LAFCO participated in a joint RFP to search for an auditing firm to conduct audits for this organization. This commission hired Davis Farr LLP to conduct audits for the next 5 years. And today we're joined by Ms. Shannon Ayala, who is going to be summarizing our first ever independent audit. So I will defer to Ms. Shannon. She should be able to control the Zoom and start her presentation. So Ms. Shannon, without further ado, I'll let you take control.
Okay, good morning. I tried to turn on my video and it says it's disabled. So if you would like to turn it on, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, I'm happy to just present without it. Let me share. Actually, I was trying to share my screen, so it just sent you a request.
You should be able to in the next few seconds.
Okay. Let's see. Hold on. There we go. Okay. All righty. Can you all see my screen?
Give us
Not yet.
1 second.
Okay.
I apologize for the technical issues. Well, we do have a backup. So Ms. Shannon, I have your presentation on our slide. So,
Okay. I can stop sharing then.
okay, perfect.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, as Mr. Serrano mentioned, I am here to report on the audit results for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. You could advance the next slide. Just want to go over the responsibilities of the auditor briefly. It is to audit the commission's financial statements in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, and to express an opinion as to whether management's financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our opinion and our work does provide reasonable assurance, but not absolute assurance. Next slide, please. So the audit process is sometimes lengthy. We performed some interim field work in September of 2024. This includes performing our risk assessments, documentation of internal controls over key accounting cycles, such as cash disbursements, receipt of revenues, and payroll transactions. And then we also performed some preliminary testing of transactions. And then we performed our final field work from November of 2024 through January of 2025. And during this field work, we substantively test all material balance sheet accounts, and then we analytically test revenues and expenses. Next slide, please. In addition to our standard audit procedures, each year during our risk assessments, we do identify areas of audit focus. This year, because it was the first year, the first ever audit for the commission, we did have to perform an audit of opening balances. So essentially the 2023 ending balances on the balance sheet, we also audit in addition to the fiscal year 2024 transactions. And then we also performed a review of recently implemented governmental accounting standards, number 87 and number 96. GASB 87 relates to accounting for leases, and GASB number 96 relates to accounting for subscription-based information technology arrangements, also referred to as SPIDAs, if you ever hear me talk about that in the future. We did determine that GASB number 87 and GASB number 96 did not apply to the organization, so there was no effect on the financial statements. Next slide, please. So the culmination of all of this work is our audit reports. You will note in the financial statements, there is an independent auditor's report, and we did have an unmodified opinion dated February 20th, 2025. The unmodified opinion is the highest level of opinion that can be received on the financial statements. Also in the financial statements at the back, which I didn't include on this slide, is the government auditing standards opinion. That's also known as the internal control letter. This will be where we would note any internal control deficiencies, significant deficiencies, or material weaknesses. And I'm happy to report that there were not any for the commission. And then lastly, we issue the communication to those in governance letter. And this is the end of audit letter, and it indicates any journal entries that we had as a result of our audit procedures that were material. We did have one material journal entry noted, and then it also indicates significant accounting estimates, which are related to the pension, and then significant disclosures, again, related to the pension. Next slide, please. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions that you may have over the audit process or the results.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there questions or comments from commissioners? Go ahead, yeah.
Well, okay, is my phone on and my speaker on? My question was in the report from staff, they talked about the beginning fund balance and that you had issues with that. Is that true?
We did have a journal entry related to the beginning fund balance, and that was in relation to accruing fiscal year 23 revenues to be reflected in fiscal year 23 fund balance. So it essentially means cash was received in fiscal year 24, but the revenues related to fiscal year 23. So we just needed to do a journal entry that essentially reduced the revenue for the current year and put it back to the prior year. And that's not an uncommon entry for first year audits.
Okay, I guess what it said in there, a key takeaway, which I didn't find in your report, that's why I'm asking, is that the total revenues and expenses, let me see, however, this financial gap has always been offset by LAFCO's healthy reserves. The healthy reserves come from the fund balance carryover, right?
Correct.
Okay, but I didn't see anything in the report that said that, and then I found it in this staff report. So I was just wondering, I know that that practice is used in a lot of places in the county. So where you have carryover funds, some of them go to exactly the project that was not constructed or taken care of that year. So it doesn't really, it still is, being used for the same.
Correct.
source.
It wasn't an issue. It's not considered an internal control issue as far as the reserve balance. It's essentially like an accounting issue. So how it was recorded with the $27,000 being recorded in fiscal year 24 is basically like cash basis of accounting. Because the cash was received in 24, it was recognized as revenue in fiscal year 24. We just moved it back to fiscal year 23 because that's what the revenue actually related to, as opposed to it being recognized as revenue in fiscal year 24.
Okay, thanks.
And Commissioner Lather, I do want to also add on in your staff report, staff did identify that in the audit, it showed that our revenues did not cover our total expenses, but that was anticipated. That's why when this commission adopted the fiscal 23-24, we used the reserves to balance the budget. So we were anticipating that gap, and that's what we were referring in the staff report. But we're at a point where we've been using our reserves historically year by year, and it's starting to reach a point where we're around 25-30% of our total budget. So it may be an opportunity for us to look into increasing our allocations from our funding agencies. The commission has frozen those allocations amount for a couple of years now. So what staff was intending to identify is we may reach a point to the reserves where we can't continue to offset our gap when it comes to total expenses with our existing revenue streams. So it was kind of a precursor for future discussions, which we will discuss at our next meeting when we look at the draft budget for fiscal year 25-26. So hopefully that answers your question about staff's identification of a gap, and that's where we identified it from the audit.
So that wasn't brought up by the consultant. It was
No, that was just kind of staff's observation of the information found in the audit.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Roger Anderson?
Not surprised by any result. There was a time down in service. We've done in the past, it's really not going. Looking forward, we have to make some decisions on how much reserves we should be having in order to cover expenses.
I apologize if that's a question for me. I could not hear it because I don't think the microphone is on. I could hear.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was curious about going forward. I think we really need a solid reserve policy about what fraction of our budget, 6 months or whatever it is, that we actually need to carry on in reserves, and then balance our assessments to different agencies in a way to cover our expenses.
Right.
Wonderful fodder for our discussion on the budget coming up at the next meeting. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? And see that Commissioner Hunt has joined us. I think it was about 9:12. Let the minutes reflect. Thank you. All right, seeing none. Are there any comments from members of the public?
Good morning, Commissioners. Becky Steinbrunner. I live in rural Aptos. And I had the same questions, Commissioner Lather, as you did. I wonder what the cash payment was. Can you, that has been discussed here, what was that all about? And I'm aware that LAFCO has paid for a number of studies and consultants to assist in reorganizations. LAFCO paid for the feasibility study for the Scotts Valley Fire and Brants 40 Fire reorganization. And I believe that there have been consultants that have been paid to assist with the upcoming CSA 48 reorganization and that study itself too. So I think it would behoove the commission to discuss perhaps with this, along with this assistance that LAFCO is providing to these agencies for public benefit, that these agencies be asked to step up and pay a little more to assist LAFCO with further actions. And this will be a good discussion for the future. Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment on the 23-24 audit? Is there anyone online?
No, sir.
All right, then I'll return to the commission for action.
I'll move recommended action.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Commissioner Jim Anderson, second by Commissioner Montesino to adopt the audit for fiscal year 23-24. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes unanimously. We'll proceed with CSA 9, Service and Sphere Review. Director Toronto.
Thank you, Chair. Give me 1 second. Thank you again, Chair. In your agenda packet, we have the draft service and sphere review for CSA 9. This is a district that was formed back in the 60s. Originally, it was to manage the highway lights, street lights, and traffic signals throughout the county. Since its formation, it evolved and now provides a number of different services in the county. As part of this report, we analyzed CSA 9 as a single entity and also their zones. They have 6 zones, and I'll talk about them briefly. But in your agenda packet, we summarize our analysis in the executive report. And for today's purposes, I'll just briefly summarize those key findings. As I mentioned, CSA 9 provides a number of different services in different portions of the county. There are 6 zones ranging from street lighting to landfill services. The next thing that we've noticed that CSA 9 has continued to experience some financial constraints. Based on staff's analysis, the CSA experienced a deficit in 4 of the last 5 fiscal years. And that's also the case for most of the zones in CSA 9. Based on our analysis, it's determined that the primary culprit of this financial issue is the benefit assessments collected for CSA 9 and its zones. Based on staff's analysis, those assessments have been unchanged for over a decade. Some of them have not changed since they were formed, since their inception. So that may be a key reason why we see these deficits, because the revenue stream is flat while annual expenses continue to grow. The third finding is that while the county has adopted a 5-year CIP capital improvement plan for CSA 9, within those 5 years, only 5 projects were scheduled. And of those 5, 3 of them were for a specific zone, which was a landfill in the county. Staff is recommending that the county consider adopting a new CIP plan that focuses on all the zones within CSA 9 to ensure that the infrastructures and the services are properly analyzed and addressed. The next thing that staff identified was the lack of transparency when it comes to CSA 9. As I mentioned, CSA 9 is a countywide district. It provides services throughout the county in 6 different zones, but there's not information about CSA 9 online. So it's difficult for people to understand why am I paying into Zone E and CSA 9, but I can't find any information about that. So it would behoove the county to consider developing a webpage dedicated to CSA 9 and its zones to provide meeting information, budget information of why this entity exists. And while state law doesn't require CSAs to have websites, it is required for water districts and fire districts. So I think it would be good government to have information available for the CSA, specifically for CSA 9, because it does provide services countywide. Lastly, this district does have a countywide sphere. Staff recommends that this sphere be reaffirmed. There's no change to its jurisdictional boundary. So staff is just requesting that the commission reaffirm the sphere with some conditions. The first condition is that the county consider analyzing their benefit assessment and also developing a CIP plan that, again, focuses on all the zones within the CSA 9 jurisdiction. The other condition that we are recommending is that the county provide an update to LAFCO within a year from now in regards to their analysis of the benefit assessments and that capital improvement plan effort. Again, I think this is an opportunity for LAFCO to encourage the county and county public works to look for ways to address these areas of improvement. So that being said, staff is recommending that the commission find that this report is exempt from CEQA, that it fulfills the requirements under LAFCO law, specifically for the sphere determinations and the service determinations. And staff is recommending that the commission adopt the resolution confirming and adopting this service and sphere review for CSA 9 and its zones. Lastly, I do want to mention to the commission that this report does fulfill the request from the grand jury that we received last year. They requested that LAFCO complete this report in March of this year. Initially, we had it scheduled to be later in the year, but we want to fulfill the request from the grand jury. So staff believe that this does fulfill the request. So if the commission approves this report, either later today or tomorrow, we will send the final version to the grand jury. Chair, with that, that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Serrano. Are there comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Jim Anderson?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed in the CSA 9 is the landfill, and my experience is that the fees for using the landfill are continuing to escalate. So I wonder how that's divided up within the whole process. And then the other thing is the ballot measures that have passed that support road repairs and stuff, how that plays into the finances here. Is it like across the board, or are there other projects outside this, or is it a capital, how's it spent?
I may defer to county staff if they're willing to answer these questions. So we have Steve Weisner from County Public Works. I appreciate you pinch hitting for that question.
Hello, is this on? Yeah, no problem. Steve Wiesner, Assistant Director of Public Works. Also have landfill staff here to answer any specific questions. I believe CSA 9C, which is the landfill zone, it hasn't been raised. They've raised the fees through the franchise agreement with the hauler, but they haven't raised 9C, I think, for a long time. And in regards to how the CSA 9D, which is, I think, 3 zones countywide, there's 9D 1, 2, and 3, that hasn't been raised since the early 90s as well. And it doesn't really interact with some of the other measures that have been passed recently. And maybe you're referring to Measure D, which was passed in 2016. So totally independent, that's a sales tax measure that was adopted countywide through the Regional Transportation Commission, of which the county receives a portion of that for road maintenance.
So they do get some money from that for road maintenance.
We do, yeah, but it has really almost nothing to do with CSA 9D, which hasn't been raised since the early 90s.
So the what I pay that's increasing at the dump is where does that go then? Again, just you said it's
Fringe.
Well, I'll have Bo come up and address that. I think they're fees that go directly into the landfill fund.
Good morning. So we have not raised CSA 9C since 1995 when Prop 218 passed. We have had to continue to raise our tipping fees at the landfill to accommodate for inflation and other added costs that we've experienced through new program implementation such as illegal dumping. These costs seem to keep rising. We sponsor green business, green schools. So those programs aren't touched by CSA 9C. They are touched by the gate fees that we receive as well as our franchise agreement.
okay.
Commissioner Lather, and then
Yeah,
Commissioner Cummings.
it's not really to you, so you could actually sit down. Having dealt with CSAs myself, I know that it's a big process to go through. I do not, I support going in and having a process and, figuring out what you're going to do next to make sure all of these actually people are paying what they need to pay to keep them afloat and actually get our, potholes filled or whatever it is that is the funding's for and the lighting. I know it's a lot of work because I've done it, and it starts with outreach and having a person dedicated to do that. I'd just like to know what Public Works is planning on doing after this.
Good morning, Steve Wiesner again. Since Prop 218 passed, it's been difficult to raise any of the existing fees for the CSA 9 as countywide and all the zones and within it. in particular. And so there's other strategies that we've been working on to raise fees to raise funds for road repairs. And, as you see, we Measure D in 2016 was one effort to do that. We're exploring right now other mechanisms that could be possible, one of which would be just a simple parcel tax, like a countywide parcel tax. We've also explored other ways to form just CSAs just within very small zones within certain areas of the county that have a desire for a higher level of service. That's another way we can do that, which would be to form just a road CSA that basically, overlays onto the existing CSA 9Ds.
So are these funds coming from taxes, from parcel taxes, or it's some other, how are we paying for it?
They do come through your property taxes. You'll see a CSA 9D, whether you live in zone, subzone 1, 2, or 3. And they've been flat. It's $56.40 a year for every parcel. It's been like that since 93. I think it's half that for undeveloped parcels. And we don't plan to increase that at all because of the issues with surrounding Prop 218. But we need to explore other mechanisms to bring in more revenues to take care of our roads.
So with Prop 218, you have to send out ballots and get 51% approval. Is that?
Yeah, you'd almost have to go back out and re-vote the existing assessment.
And so every year, if you needed 3% more, you have to keep doing that?
That's right. That's right. And then with Prop 218, I think it would call into question the entire assessment. And so I think the strategy would be moving forward would be to create other mechanisms for funding.
Yeah, it's not as simple as what I did.
No, it's not. It's actually kind of difficult. And so in these historic CSAs that were formed many, many years ago, I mean, they're very valuable to our communities and we preserve them and we use them as efficiently as we can. But it's certainly not enough in today's modern dollars. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you. The only question I have is around the kind of online information piece of this. And I know you mentioned that water districts and fire districts are required to have a website, and I'm not sure how legislative asks work with LAFCO, but I'm wondering if that's something that maybe needs to be brought up statewide, as whether or not there needs to be, some state legislation that requires CS counties to provide CSA maps. If that's something we can, whether it's LAFCO asking, some folks at the state to do this, or if we're asking locally. But I'm just curious what might be some of your thoughts and recommendations around how we might be able to make that ask. Because it seems like, just given the fact that everybody's trying to, most people are getting their information online, and that there's this, question of what am I paying for, wanting to know what it's going towards. I think that having that be a state requirement might be something that wouldn't be so big of a lift at the state level.
Great question. And yes, people are expecting to have accessibility to information, especially online. And a law did pass in 2018 requiring independent special districts to have websites accessible to the public. 2018, that's only a couple of years ago in my mind. And so that's something that it took that long just to have a requirement for special districts to have that information online. I actually think that's a really good idea that LAFCO can coordinate with our state legislators to see if that's something that we could expand so that it covers all special districts, not just independent. I will note that the county does its best to provide information to the public. I'm not saying that they're not trying, but the county has so many different departments and all these different components. It's difficult to, navigate through the labyrinth of the county website. But again, that being said, I think it would be beneficial for the public to have this type of information easily accessible. And so that's the reason why LAFCO is encouraging the county to consider providing more information online. We can force them to take any action, but the county has been receptive to LAFCO's requests in the past. For example, CSA 38, which involves the sheriff department. We did a similar request, and the county did improve their website to have more information about CSA 38. So I hope that we can continue that momentum of providing more information online. But in regards to possible legislation, that's something that I can definitely coordinate with Cal LAFCO and our state legislators.
Is that a letter that's going to be coming to the board, or what should we be expecting in terms of the county?
So after, assuming the commission approves this MSR, we will send the final version to the county, informing them of the adoption and also the recommendation. So LAFCO staff will be coordinating with county staff and specifically Public Works, and then we'll have them provide that information to the Board of Supervisors. Or if you want LAFCO to present to at a future Board of Supervisors meeting, I'm more than happy to do that. But typically we coordinate with county staff.
Yeah. Whatever the coordination ends up being and whatever the decision is, whether it's you all presenting or them presenting, yeah, I think it'd be good for the board to have this update as well.
Perfect.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Got a couple. Well, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. The first one has to do with the revenue shortfall, or once in a while, a positive revenue. And I would like to see a cumulative graph of what actually has happened in terms of the subsidy of the CSA. And so I suspect that it's going to show a cumulative over the last 10 years or so, a cumulative deficit, which somebody's buying, somebody's paying for. And I'd like to know, is this picked up out of county reserves, or is there some other way that this can actually be covered? And then a somewhat similar thing is the fairly large statements for basically doing capital improvements. And I'm curious what the funding, how that is actually done. Does the county lend the money to the agency? Are there grants? What sorts of process actually do that? Because it's clearly, since the 218 is a big complication, as we heard just a few minutes ago, some of these questions may be relevant. So I really would like to see some of that information.
I appreciate the comments, and I think LAFCO staff can create some type of cumulative graph and present it to the commission. And as I mentioned, we are scheduled to provide an update to the commission a year from now. So that may be an opportunity to provide this additional information, as well as an update from the county regarding potential website and their efforts to look into how to maneuver from Prop 218.
Well, thank you. I actually would pose that as a question to Director Wiesner. So the deficit that's being run by CSA 9, I assume that the backfill for that's just coming out of the general fund. And is there a particular one of these, A through F subzones that's causing the deficit?
The deficit's an interesting thing, because I think it's a deficit between fiscal years, but no, we do not rely on other funds to cover our CSA expenditures. It would be just transferred to the next year, or the charges to that would be transferred out. We don't use other funds to fund CSA 9 work. So, and I think that when we talk about deficits, sometimes we'll overspend just very little bit. I don't think these deficits are large. From year to year, and we try to right size them in the next year. And so we, because of the pressure on all of the CSA zones, as far as the revenues go and the expenditures go, we do spend up to almost just practically the last dollar every single year. And so I think that's what probably we're speaking about. I don't think the deficits are large. They are not covered by county general funds or anything like that. And they're just right sized in the following year, is the way I understand it.
Maybe Director Serrano, if you could pull up the slide that showed the deficits. It seemed like it was about $100,000 from what I could see. And you're saying that might actually just be getting passed from one year to the next. And
yeah, it was, and that's really pretty small compared to, just the CSA 9Ds alone bring in about $2.7 million annually. So, and then 9C, I'm not sure what, know. It's about 3.2. So, we're talking very many millions of dollars is what all of these zones generate. And if we only have $100,000, that's pretty, that's easy to handle from one year to the next.
Okay. Well, while they're looking for that slide, I'll ask the next question, which also kind of relates to Commissioner Jim Anderson. So, and this request that the commission has it before us today to make of the CSA 9 regarding having a capital improvement plan. So obviously there are a lot of different fund sources for roads, and obviously we have a CIP for the county as a whole. Could you just describe exactly like what kind of projects CSA 9D for like the road fund in this case pays for, or is it specifically potholes? I mean, the larger capital improvement projects are paid for by other sources of funds. I'm just wondering what would it look like to actually put together a CIP for CSA 9D, for example?
That's a great question. I'm not sure it would be actually totally necessary. We use the bulk of the funds for CSA 9D for road maintenance, and these are core areas, right? Pavement repairs, roadside ditching, roadside mowing and vegetation control, striping and legend replenishment. So this is all very basic maintenance types of items, is what was covered in CSA 9D. So I would suggest that a CIP is not appropriate for 9D. However, CSA 9, which is our safety lighting district, mostly again covers the maintenance of all our signalized intersections and all of our street lighting. Sometimes we do invest a small amount from CSA 9 in a project an improvement project, say like signal construction or something like that. In that case, that project would be covered by the county CIP as you referred to. So as far as and the landfill, I can't speak to the landfill as to whether you guys do CIP projects in 9C. Right, and those end up basically getting in the county CIP as well. And so I think for the most part, our CSA 9s, they do not invest in large capital improvements, but when they do, they're covered in the county CIP program.
Got it. So, I mean, basically to fulfill this request, it would sort of be a subset of the larger county CIP, the funds that are coming from CSA 9.
That's right. And you would see in the larger county CIP, a lot of times we'll have a multitude of funding sources, a myriad of funding sources that make up the funding for one particular project. CSA 9 could be like an element of that, and we would identify that.
Right. Okay. I think it's page 14 there. That's the one I was thinking of. One more up. This is only showing revenues revenues and expenditures in the range of what 1.15 to in the revenues to 1.2425 there in fiscal year 2019-20. So are we looking at like one of the subzones? I mean, Assistant Director Reasoner, you mentioned that it was, in the multi-millions of dollars.
Yeah.
What's the discrepancy here? And
Yeah, so this is showing just CSA 9 as the parent company. And so this shows their deficits ranged from $40,000 to $95,000 a year. Now all these other zones have their own budgets and their own surpluses / deficits. But this one right here that we're seeing is the CSA 9 as a whole. And then all these subzones, which LAFCO has no purview over, the County Board of Supervisors can create or dissolve these zones. They have their own budgetary figures.
Yeah, it is a little confusing because CSA 9 it was originally created for highway lighting and safety. And then as the subzones come in, they're listed out in letters, right? A, D, F, et cetera. And so it is a little confusing because CSA 9 does sit on its own and has its own revenue, and it's basically its own subzone.
Interesting. That is a bit confusing.
Yeah. So what the deficit of CSA D doesn't affect CSA 9 as a whole. It has its own little subcomponent, which that's the reason why LAFCO did an analysis of each single one to show them as almost like independent from one another, because that's exactly what's happening here.
Right. Of course. All right. I think those are my major questions. I'll just a couple comments. Actually, just last year, we did make an effort to increase the fees for CSA 9E, right, which is the street maintenance within the Live Oak Soquel area at the old redevelopment work. I think we were asking residents to go from paying about $3.25 up to about $7, and that failed. And granted, the timing could have been a little bit better. We were running it around the holidays because we ultimately wanted to be ready to do the work in the spring when it's most necessary. There's hindsight's 2020, and there's plenty of things we could have done better. But nevertheless, I think it just demonstrates the challenge in increasing these fees, even a very small amount, with the Prop 218 election. Then the other comment is on CSA 9F. We did in fact repeal the ordinances related to the SoCal Village parking a couple of years ago now. And so I don't see any issue with actually just dissolving CSA 9F as a result. It's sort of just a whatever legacy zone. Now, yeah, I mean, basically the way I see this is largely sort of as a funding mechanism, right? Especially when it comes to roads, and rather than for most of these, I mean, CSA 9E is a little bit more individual because it has such a specific set of projects that is only funded by this. And I think we actually might be running a deficit there now as well, since folks didn't want to increase the funding, and we're still just trying to make it work and make sure things are safe out there, and that there's visible sight lines and et cetera. So in any case, those are my comments. I see no problem with moving forward with the recommended actions today. Yeah.
I have one more question. So in light of the development between Thurber Lane and 41st Avenue, I'm guessing that there'll be, sidewalk remodifications and lights and stuff, and those will be paid by the developments, right?
Yeah, you're correct. The types of improvements that would happen on the frontages of county roadways via development, the cost would be borne by the developer. Yeah.
I mean, we'll probably get a few hundred extra bucks of maintenance money out of this as we go from an undeveloped lot charge of whatever it is, $1.50 to 180 residences at $3 a piece or something like that. So
Forget the traffic impact from all that development.
yes, I'm sure the project will have some traffic impact fees as well. Yeah, but the plants might be looking a little bit happier. All right. If there's no other comments or questions from commissioners, I'll open it to members of the public.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. I would just sort of tag on to what Mr. Wiesner just said. Developer fees, if the developer is required to pay them. The county has subsidized the Aptos Village project and Barry Swenson builder enormously, including highway, the traffic lights. And I believe some of that did come from CSA 9. I want to just say I have seen many Prop 218 measures go through, and I think they're actually easier to accomplish than a parcel tax avenue, because it is based on the level of protest, which, as you know, is very difficult to get. So doing a Prop 218 vote is not that difficult. It does require an engineer's report, as you know, but that is a simple, straightforward thing. And it's based on protest to shoot it down. Otherwise, it goes through. You're shaking your head, Director Lather, but that's been my experience here and in other issues in the county. I also want to point out that road maintenance is funded with other things besides Measure D, since this is really today's action is to address the county grand jury. I did go back and read the grand jury's report, and it mentioned Measure D, which you've talked about. It mentioned Measure K, which was a new half-cent sales tax and gives $1 million a year to road maintenance. But it didn't mention Measure G that was passed in 2018 that also promised a half-cent sales tax would fund road maintenance. And it did not mention Measure B, which passed in 2022 and also promised the voters road maintenance. None of the money from those ballot measures, well, all of it went into the general fund. So we cannot know, because we don't know transparently where the money is going from from CSA 9 versus these other things. And that's all in the general fund pot, and we don't know where that's going either. So there are other funding avenues. I am a member of a road maintenance CSA number 33. We also had been negligent in updating our consumer price index increases on ours. And we were told by Public Works that we could do a one-time catch-up. And it was like 9 years worth. And if it had approval of the people, the liaisons, we could do that. And we did. And it was a 27% increase in 1 year. And those who were at the meeting knew about it. We did outreach. Can I have a little more time, please?
I'll defer to the chair.
No?
You can have 30 more seconds.
Okay, thank you. So we did that, and that went through, and that caught us up. So why cannot the county board of supervisors also take that action, Public Works take that action, and do a catch up on all these years that no consumer price index has been taken? We still don't know where CSA 9 monies have been spent. I really would like to see that. And I really think that's what the grand jury was asking too, in terms of that. And I do not want to see rural roads abandoned. Measure D only gets done, that work only gets done in the urban areas, and nothing for the rural roads. Our fire evacuation routes need to be addressed. We cannot abandon our rural roads and our rural residents because the roads are falling apart. And that is part of a plan that I have heard.
Thank you, Ms. Becky.
Thank you, Ms. Steinberger.
Thank you. This is a big issue. Thank you.
Actually, just a couple. I'm sorry. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Are there any other
Chair.
members in chamber or online?
I don't know.
A couple of things. I do think that we do have the option to build in CPI with as part of the policy. I think we actually consider that with CSA 9E, asking folks going forward to allow price increases up to CPI. Something that is possible. Of course, a lot of the current fees do not include that. And I know that's exactly the problem for the CSA 9E saw, is that after 30 years, the purchasing power of that fund fell by half. Maybe it would be helpful though. I mean, that we definitely did have to send out ballots to everyone, and a majority had to approve in that case of that. And so maybe someone could describe for the edification of the commission, members of the public, when a protest vote is possible and when it does have to be an individual ballot sent out.
Is council present today?
Yes.
Because I understand Prop 218, and there's a different process depending on what kind of funds you're putting together. And for water, it is a protest vote that could put it, but in wastewater. But for other things such as roads, you have to have a vote of a majority of the people there. And I don't know if it's how many were sent out or just how many are returned, but maybe council could explain that.
Yeah, that's correct. The Prop 218 procedures that the public commenter were mentioning, those are the ones that apply to water, sewer, and solid waste services. They're much less onerous than the other provisions under 218. And to the county speaker, there are even limitations into 218 as to what can be charged for fees going forward. So that is likely where some of those challenges are coming from.
All right, thank you. There are no other comments or questions from commissioners. Is there a motion to adopt the of any kind?
I'll move recommended action. Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Jim Anderson, second by Commissioner Cummings to adopt the recommended actions. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll proceed with item 6. Other business. And 6A is shared services agreement with Monterey LAFCO.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. These next couple items should be fairly quickly. So we did receive a request from our neighboring LAFCO to help them and provide them administrative support. They will be without a commission clerk. And they've heard good things about your staff, specifically Francisco, and how he's been able to really take helms as the office manager. So they are asking that we can provide them help in improving their internal operations, specifically in 2 ways. One, help them with their commission meetings. And also two is improve their their file inventory. Right now, they're trying to digitize all their information, but they want to know what's the best way to house all these files, in the cloud. And your staff has worked on that for several years now, and we have a really good system where we can locate our files fairly quickly and easily. So they want to replicate that. So this is an opportunity for us to provide assistance to them temporarily. But on the flip side, I see this as an opportunity to cross-train our analysts. Monterey LAFCO has 2 seasoned senior analysts on their team, as well as a great executive officer with Kate McKenna, who was more like a mentor for me. And this will be an opportunity for Francisco to learn from those individuals so that he can see life beyond the Santa Cruz LAFCO bubble. So I see this as a win-win. It's important to note that this is for temporary assistance, and if and only if your staff is available to provide assistance. So that's the key thing. Another topic that I want to just clarify is that your commission will be reimbursed for any time that your staff helps Monterey LAFCO. We will keep track of our hours, and they will pay our staff hourly rate accordingly. So this is not something that you're going to lose staff time, or your salary towards staff is going to be off subsidizing another LAFCO. That's not the case. It's going to be covered appropriately, and only if we're available. That being said, staff is recommending that the commission does approve this agreement so we can start providing assistance to Monterey LAFCO as early as later this month. So, Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Roger Anderson?
Yeah, just a couple things. The first thing is I won't be surprised if there are startup costs for this. In other words, for your staff and yourself to learn the procedures of Monterey. And that's going to take some time, and I'm just curious about whether that will be reimbursed or not. That's the most important thing I was going to say.
Yes, so we made it clear in discussions with Monterey LAFCO and also in the agreement that any time that we spend helping Monterey LAFCO, we will be keeping track of. So this learning curve of our time there, that's also going to be charged.
Okay. And the other question is the $100 and something an hour that you'd be charging Monterey. Is that basically cover all of the fringe benefits and everything else of staff?
Correct. So this commission adopted a kind of a fee schedule, and in our policies, it covers staff's time. So it's like a blended rate that covers all those factors. So yes.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Jim Anderson?
I just question, there's a mileage proponent in there. So is all this going to be done in Monterey, or can he do some of it from Santa Cruz? How often will he be out of the office, or do we anticipate?
Great question. So they are expecting for us to be at their location at least once a month. There are opportunities where we can do things remotely. And if for example, if Francisco were to go to the Monterey office, he will be reimbursed for the mileage. But yes, there'll be opportunities where we can help them from our office as well.
Commissioner Cummings?
I'm just curious about the timeline in terms of when they're gonna be able to fill that position. Just because, if we're gonna spend all this time, or Francisco's gonna spend all this time kind of getting up to speed to try to help them out, like what's the expectation in terms of them filling that position and having this kind of split position? Because I just worry about, time allocations and commitments, moving forward. It's great that they're paying for his time, but also the reason why he's in this position is primarily to support Santa Cruz, right? And so I'm just wanting to get a better understanding of, how this is going to work moving forward, and what's going to be their motivation to want to fill that position and not solely rely on Francisco this time.
It is a great question, Commissioner. It's my understanding that they are either going to look for a new commission clerk, or they're going to try to mimic Santa Cruz LAFCO's model, which is we have like a hybrid staffer here who is our analyst, but also does office management responsibilities. And maybe they'll learn from Francisco of maybe one of their analysts can assume that role. So they're trying to learn of what's their next step. Are they going to find a new commission clerk, or are they going to adopt Santa Cruz LAFCO's method? And I think that's that question mark that they're not sure yet. But that's why we made it clear that we'll provide temporary assistance, but this is not a long-term thing. We're not going to be sharing our staff, in perpetuity. This is just as they try to figure out what their next step is going to be.
The comments or questions from the commission? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I always like to see cross-training and collaboration among agencies. My question is, does Mr. Estrada have time to do this? And I have to wonder, if Monterey County LAFCO has 2 analysts, how can the one analyst that Santa Cruz County have really take on training and doing the work of Monterey County's LAFCO, as well as your current workload? So I would like to hear, is this going to work for you and the workload that you currently have? Because that's your job and that's who you serve first. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbruner. Anyone else in the public here wish to comment? Anyone online?
No, Chair.
All right, I'll turn to the commission. I think it is a fair question. Francisco, tell us about your availability to actually do this work?
Thank you for the question, Chair. My progression has really picked up in year 3. The first 2 years were a little challenging just because it took a minute to really understand the minutia of everything, but things have been picking up. I feel much more confident. And with Joe's help and mentorship, it's just that we'll take it slow. We'll start off slow. If I can't do something, I'll let Joe know right away. And it'll be a little bit of adjusting to Monterey, but just like here in Santa Cruz, once things pick up, things really do pick up. So I feel that as long as I'm transparent with the commission and with Joe about my workload, I think we can make it work.
Okay, thank you.
And Chair, I will note that Santa Cruz LAFCO is and will continue to be our top priority. We see Monterey LAFCO is one example of them reaching out to us for help. There's been other LAFCOs around the state that have asked us for help, and we're more than happy to if we're available and if we're willing and capable. So that will be extended to Monterey LAFCO. But if there's a project that we need to work on, that's going to be our #1 priority here. And if we can provide assistance, great. But it's not mandatory or guaranteed.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
So what's the time expectation, say, per week that you'll be helping Monterey? I know you've helped other LAFCOs on projects from time to time. I'm just wondering, we're talking like maybe we're going to lose them, for a long time, but it's probably a few hours a week, maybe, or.
Yeah, if that. I think their main assistance is their commission meeting, and that would be maybe a few hours on that day. So it's going to be just a couple hours per month.
Okay.
I'll
Commissioner
move that
Montesino.
recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, we'll give it to Commissioner Jim Anderson. So there's a motion by Commissioner Montesino, second by Commissioner Jim Anderson for the staff recommendation. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. We'll move forward with the employee performance evaluation. We should consider adjusting staff salary based on their annual performance evaluation.
Thank you, Chair. I'll defer to legal counsel if the commission has any questions, but this resolution reflects the discussion that the commission had during your last closed session about staff's performance during the 2024 calendar year. It is staff's understanding that the commission directed legal counsel to provide an increase in staff salaries based on our productivity and performance. So this draft resolution reflects the commission's request for those proposed increases to our hourly rates. So staff is recommending that the commission approve that draft resolution, but staff is and legal counsel is available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions from commissioners? Any comments from members of the public? Anyone online? All right,
Sir.
Seeing none, I'll return to the commission for action.
I'll
I'll,
move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Lather, second by Commissioner Jim Anderson to approve the staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. We will proceed with the legislative update.
And I'll actually defer to our analyst to give a brief presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Executive Officer, Mr. Chair. The legislative update is meant to be, it's informational, it's for informational purposes only. No action will be required. In the past, Cal LAFCO staff would track and provide LAFCO statewide with updates on legislative bills that are of LAFCO interest. With Cal LAFCO currently in transition, and our executive officer will touch on that in a bit, your staff has decided to take on this added responsibility. So starting this year, we aim to provide the commission with 2 legislative updates per year, one in May and one in November. The May update will come after bills have passed their respective houses, and in November, after the governor has had time to sign proposed bills into law. Staff is also happy to provide updates if needed throughout the year. And in your staff report, you will see 4 bills that we're currently tracking. And we're also coordinating and working with the offices of Senator Laird and Assemblymember Pellerin just to learn more about these bills and the state legislative process itself. That's my report, Chair. We're happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Roger Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to be sure that the commission sees prospective bills in time enough so we can take some action, whether we want to support it or using the terminology of Cal LAFCO watch or oppose.
I think that's a great request, and that was our intent. If there's any bills that are in need of this commission to be aware of and need to take action, that we will present that to the commission at that time.
All right. Are there any comments from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Estrada, for taking on this duty. With Cal LAFCO being in transition, I think it would also be good that this commission be free to suggest pieces of legislation or changes to the legislation, not only comments on issues already in the works, but reaching out to our local representatives for issues that you see need to be addressed within LAFCO and legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbrenner. Is there anyone online?
No, Chair.
All right. Information item only. Thank you for the update and the information in the packet. Proceed with the Cal LAFCO update.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep this brief. And as Francisco alluded, Cal LAFCO is in transition. I like to think of the year 2025 as the year of rebuilding, not only internally, but building trust with the membership. Just a quick recap. We are experiencing some growing pains at the moment with Cal LAFCO. 5 of the 58 LAFCOs in the state have indicated that they're not going to renew their membership for this upcoming fiscal year. 4 of those 5 are from the southern region, and they're the reality is the biggest contributors to the statewide organization. So that will definitely be a financial impact to the upcoming budget. We've also no longer have the executive director that was with us for a couple of years. Their last day was in January of 31st of this year. We do have an interim executive director who is Jose Henriquez. He's the executive officer for Sacramento LAFCO. So he is currently taking on that role. The other main thing that we're dealing with is just there's disagreements between the board members on Cal LAFCO, and that's really impacting their productivity and activity at the Capitol and representation of the member LAFCO. So that's kind of the high level summary of the issues that we're experiencing. But the rebuilding process is ongoing. We do have a transition team in place. Former executive director Pamela Miller, who was with Cal LAFCO for a number of years, she's back as a temporary assistant. We also have our former administrative assistant, Jenny Tickler. She is back once again. So we have great cast back to help us right the ship. The other thing is, I think the board has finally understand that there are frustrations and concerns from the member LAFCOs, and they're taking that seriously now. It took them a while to get it, but I think we're at the point that they finally understand that, okay, we do have a problem, and it's not going to just go away by us saying, hey, don't worry about it. So action needs to be taken. They are going to have a 2-day retreat to talk about the future of Cal LAFCO and how to resolve the issues that the member agencies have identified. Your staff, as the regional officer for the coastal region, I'll be there participating in those discussions. Also, as the regional officer, which there's 4, we really been proactive in addressing the member agencies' concerns. In fact, we proposed changes to the Cal LAFCO's policies and bylaws. Those changes were approved. All the changes were approved by the board at their last board meeting in February. The changes that we identified for the bylaws, that does require membership vote. That is scheduled to be done in October. So what were the changes in the bylaws? The biggest thing is the member agencies feel that they need to be at the table. And so we were requested to consider the idea of having member LAFCOs sit on the Cal LAFCO board. And so that was approved in concept. That still needs to be vetted and also voted on by the member LAFCO. So that's something that's going to be discussed at this retreat and throughout the year. But that was one of the biggest requests that we received. Other changes that were identified in the policies were in place and are already effective. We have identified an advisory commission that has member LAFCOs on. We improved the communication process between the board and the member LAFCO. So things that were like pretty straightforward, we now have it in writing. Also, the rotation of the board members is being considered as part of the regional officer's recommendations. So we are going in the right direction, but there's still a lot to be done. But I'm hoping that 2025 will end in a more positive note, and we're hoping that the 5 LAFCOs that left will be back hopefully by the end of this calendar year. But for now, we're going to do everything we can to just be an effective organization. Chair, that apologize for the longer update, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions. This is an informational item, so no action is required.
Thank you, Director Serrano. Are there comments or questions from commissioners? All right, seeing none, best of luck with that. That concludes item 6. Is there anything, any written correspondence to note?
No, Chair.
All right, any press articles worthy of note?
No, Chair.
Any commissioners' business? Any commissioner want to share anything with the entire commission? All right, seeing none, that brings us to adjournment. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025 at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.